I don't know where you're watching this video from, maybe during a quiet evening or in the middle of an exhausting day. But if you've clicked here, perhaps, it's not just a coincidence. Take a moment, look at your palm, not to find your destiny like in fortune telling, but to see it differently, as if your body is whispering something your mind has never fully heard. Do you see it, a letter M where the lines cross, or a small curve like a crescent moon? These marks aren't common, and if you've noticed them, maybe this video was meant to find you. Since childhood, you may have felt different from those around you, not in a strange or eccentric way, but in a deeper way. You noticed things others missed. You felt uneasy in shallow conversations. You were sensitive to what felt fake. You were hurt by things others easily brushed off. You tried to live like everyone else. Smile, fit in, do the right thing. But inside, there was still a quiet emptiness, as if you'd never truly lived as yourself. If you have this mark, you may realize something: your life has never been easy. You feel everything more intensely than others. You love, deeply hurt, deeply, and fall harder. And yet somehow, you still keep going. That's a truth shared by many who carry the letter M or the crescent moon. They live in this world, but always feel there's something beyond it, a question without an answer, a longing without a name. And when life pushes you through enough pain, enough repetition, enough loss, you begin to ask an old question again, but this time from a deeper place. Who am I? Why am I living this life? Have I forgotten something important? If you're standing at that threshold, then this isn't just a video. This is a message from your soul, a gentle reminder that something inside you once knew the way, but has been sleeping far too long. The life of those with the mark, a path that's never easy, but always meaningful. Have you ever felt like you had to grow up too soon? Not in age, but in the weight you had to learn to carry when other children were still allowed to be carefree. Maybe it was harsh words, a cold silence at home, or a pain you couldn't even name because others said it's not that big of a deal. From a young age, you learned to hide your feelings. You learned to step back, to stay quiet, to endure, not because you were weak, but because you could feel other people's pain, even when they said nothing at all. For those with a distinct M or a crescent moon on their palms, life rarely begins gently. It often begins with a deep sense of not belonging. You felt out of sync with your family, out of place among friends, out of step with the world's expectations. You tried to adapt. You tried to live like everyone else, work hard, be likable, smile just enough so no one would ask too many questions. But deep inside, there was always a voice whispering, "I'm playing someone else's role." No matter how much you achieved, how much you were praised, there remained a hollow space inside you, one no amount of approval could fill. You've loved deeply, and you've also shattered deeply, not because you're fragile, but because when you love, you give all of yourself. You love with no armor, no backup plan. And when they leave gently or cruelly, you don't just lose a person, you lose a piece of your trust in the world. Maybe you've experienced a best friend turning into a stranger, a relationship that made you feel never enough, a family where love felt conditional and you had to earn your place. No one saw it because you're good at carrying. You're used to silent storms. You've mastered the art of crying in the bathroom, then walking out smiling like nothing happened. And then came the question, why does this keep happening to me? Am I the problem? But the truth is, you're not broken. You just carry a soul that's more sensitive than the world knows what to do with. You're not weak. You just feel more, see more, love more, and that makes you hurt more too. But it also makes you extraordinary. The life of those with this sign is like a deep river, calm on the surface, but underneath 1,000 unseen currents. You don't crash loudly. You don't demand attention. But when someone truly meets your energy, they remember it forever. There's a certain kind of person that everyone leans on when things fall apart, but who often has no one to lean on themselves. Sound familiar? You've been the listener, the fixer, the last one to leave, the one who stays calm when others fall apart, the one who forgives, even when you're never asked to. But when you fall, people say you're strong, you'll get through it, and they walk away. So you shut down. You built walls not out of bitterness, but out of exhaustion. You didn't want anyone touching the shattered parts of your heart anymore. And yet, no matter how much you pulled back, your soul kept whispering one thing: you weren't meant to live half asleep. You were born to turn your cracks into light. Maybe that's why you understand pain. That's why you really listen, not with your ears, but with your presence. That's why strangers tell you their life story. Why people say there's just something about you, because you've been to the edge. You've walked through fire, and you came back softer, not harder, wiser, not colder. You haven't had an easy life, but every chapter, no matter how painful, carried a deeper purpose. No experience was wasted. No tear was meaningless. Every scar became a star, and every time you rose again, you silently declared, "I'm still here, and this time, I'm showing up as my whole self." Why me karma rebirth and the soul's deeper lessons? There are moments in life when you quietly ask, why does everything feel so hard for me? Why do others seem to find peace more easily while I keep facing storm after storm? Is it because I'm not good enough? And sometimes, in your loneliest hours, you even wonder, did life forget about me? But maybe the truth is something else entirely. Because often, the souls that have walked the furthest are not given an easy path. They're given a meaningful one. They're not punished, they're prepared. In Buddhist philosophy, nothing is truly random. No sorrow, no joy, no relationship, no loss exists without a cause. This is the law of karma, not as a form of cosmic reward or punishment, but as a natural unfolding. Everything you think, say, or do plants a seed. And when the conditions are right, that seed blooms, whether in this life or in a life long past. Maybe you've been a healer before, or maybe you've caused pain you weren't ready to understand. Perhaps you've been loved deeply and also lost deeply, taught with wisdom and also forgotten what you once knew. Whatever the story, your soul returned to finish what was left undone, to learn what was once resisted, to break a pattern passed down through generations, to become whole again. And if you carry a rare mark on your palm, a clear M or a crescent moon, perhaps your soul is nearing the end of a long, long journey. That's why your life doesn't feel light or shallow. Because you're not here for surface experiences. You're here for depth. You're not being tested with small lessons anymore. You're being refined by loss that cuts through bone, by betrayals that collapse your world, by emptiness that forces you inward, not to punish you, but to ask you softly and fiercely, at once, are you ready now to truly awaken? You may have loved someone who left without explanation, lost someone before you were ready, poured your soul into a dream that collapsed overnight, faced cycle after cycle of disappointment, even though you gave your all. It wasn't bad luck. It was the soul's final classroom, because the universe doesn't shake those who are still asleep. It only stirs the ones whose time has come. There's a teaching in Zen Buddhism I've always carried: when karma rapens, no one can escape it. But when awareness awakens, nothing can bind you. And perhaps right now, as you sit quietly with these words, karma is unfolding, but awareness is also opening. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to know your exact path. Just listen deeply, because maybe your soul has known all along that you're not here to blend in. You're here to complete something ancient, to remember, and to walk home not with applause, but with peace. Awakening, the in-between phase of two lives. There comes a point in the life of nearly everyone who carries these special marks, a distinct M or a subtle crescent moon on the palm, when something within begins to shift. But awakening doesn't usually arrive with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself through fireworks or dramatic visions. More often than not, it starts quietly, in the form of discomfort. You begin to notice the things that used to excite you now feel empty. The conversations you once engaged in now feel exhausting. You no longer want to impress anyone, you just want to feel at peace inside your own skin. Life still looks the same from the outside. You wake up, go to work, play your roles. But inside, something no longer fits. You look around and quietly ask yourself, is this really my life? When did I stop feeling alive? Awakening doesn't crash through the door. It sneaks in through small disconnections, through a rising sense that you can no longer keep pretending, even if you're not sure what comes next. You begin to seek out silence more often, avoid the noise of the crowd, crave nature solitude and inner stillness. Feel the urge to cry, not for anything specific, but because your soul is shedding layers. And no, it's not depression. It's the space between the old you and the you that is being born. You can't explain it to others. Words fail. You just know something inside is changing deeply. You feel less interested in proving yourself, less attached to goals that used to matter, less willing to engage in small talk or pretend to be okay when you're not. But at the same time, you begin to feel a longing for truth, not outside you, but within. This is a sacred transition. It's not the end of the worlds, it's the end of the old version of you. And no, it won't happen overnight. But the moment you stop resisting, you begin to notice something else awakening. Your intuition grows stronger. You're more drawn to honesty, gentleness, simplicity. You stop chasing and start trusting. You stop hiding and start breathing more freely. You don't need to know all the next steps. You don't need to hurry this process. You just need to be still long enough to feel what's true, because the first sign of awakening isn't that you feel enlightened. It's that you finally admit, I can't go back to living the way I did before. And from that moment, even if the path ahead is uncertain, you've already begun. A quiet rebirth, a return to yourself, and a life that no longer needs to be perfect, only real. The mission of those with the mark, not to save the world, but to be fully yourself. When people hear the word mission, they often imagine something grand, something heroic, something that changes the world. But for those who carry the mark, a letter M or a crescent moon on their palm, your mission is not about doing something massive. It's about living deeply aligned with your truth. That's it. And that's everything. You don't need to become a guru. You don't need to gather followers or fix anyone's life. You just need to become the clearest, most honest version of yourself. Not the version that pleases others, not the version that performs to be accepted, but the version that breathes freely without hiding, without pretending. That is your mission. And yes, it is harder than it sounds, because in order to live honestly, you'll have to acknowledge the pain you tried to bury. Let go of the roles that earned you approval but cost you your peace. Revisit the places inside you where love once turned into silence. You may have always been the helper, the strong one, the one who holds everyone else together. But have you ever asked yourself, who holds me when I collapse? Who sees me when I'm no longer useful? The mission of your soul is not to carry the whole world. It's to realize that you never had to prove your worth in the first place. You are worthy simply because you are here. You are enough before you do anything at all. And something beautiful happens when you begin to truly believe that. You start to heal people around you without trying. You walk into rooms and shift energy with your presence. You become a mirror not by preaching, but by living. You start planting seeds, not with lectures, but with the quiet steadiness of a heart that has known pain and chosen softness anyway. This is how you fulfill your mission. In silence, in sincerity, in showing up every day as yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to stop betraying your own soul in order to keep others comfortable, and the world will feel it. Even if no one says it out loud, your vibration will ripple into the lives around you. There's a simple truth many forget. The world doesn't need you to be spectacular. The world just needs you to be awake. Because when you live honestly, without the mask, without the performance, you become a silent light in a very noisy world. You weren't sent here to repeat the old stories. You came to rewrite them, to end cycles, to bring awareness where there was once only reaction, to choose truth again and again. And sometimes, all it takes is one awakened soul to shift the entire rhythm of the space they walk through. Subtle signs that you're completing your mission. There is no trumpet sounding, no certificate handed to you by the universe, no voice whispering you've made it. But if you're quiet enough, you'll start to feel something shift within a peacefulness that no longer depends on outcomes. Not everything will be fixed, but you'll begin to sense something inside me has changed. 1. You no longer react the way you used to. The things that once shattered you now pass through you like wind through trees. It's not because you're numb. It's because you understand. You understand that not everyone knows how to love. You understand that people often act from their own wounds. And most importantly, you don't take everything personally anymore. You let go not because you're tired, but because you've grown lighter. 2, you feel enough without needing to prove anything. You're no longer addicted to approval. You don't chase attention or validation. You've stopped living according to someone else's map of success. You realize now peace is better than praise. Stillness is better than applause. And being real is better than being liked. 3, you choose silence not because you're lonely, but because you're full. You're no longer afraid to be alone. In fact, you crave it because in your solitude, you hear the voice of your soul more clearly than ever. You're not closing off. You're just opening up in a different direction, one that honors your truth. 4. Your relationships begin to shift gently but unmistakably. Those who no longer match your energy naturally fade away. You don't force anyone to stay. You don't chase. And those who resonate with your new frequency, they arrive softly, without drama, without noise, like soul friends returning home. 5. Old patterns begin to dissolve. You're no longer attracting the same kind of heartbreak. You don't replay the same lessons just because they feel familiar. You begin to choose differently. And because of that, life responds differently. What once felt like fate, you now realize was just an unhealed part of you choosing the same story again and again. Now you're choosing with awareness, and that is liberation. 6. You stop searching outside and start trusting inside. You no longer consume endless books or advice looking for the answer, because now you've started listening to your own wisdom. You still learn, but you no longer ignore the guidance already inside your body, your gut, your breath. You feel lighter not because life got easier, but because you're no longer dragging the weight of pretending. You see, completing your mission isn't about achieving something monumental. It's about becoming so deeply aligned with your soul that even your smallest actions carry sacred intention. It's when you can forgive someone who never apologized, say no without guilt, end cycles that drained you for years, choose softness without shame, walk away without resentment. And when you do these things, a door opens, not outside, inside, and you begin a new cycle. In this new cycle, pain may still visit, but it no longer controls you. You feel peaceful even in solitude. You feel alive, not just existing. And most of all, you feel like you're finally where you were always meant to be. This is not a fantasy. This is the quiet reward of a soul that has walked through fire and come back whole. The final reminder: awaken fully and stop living halfway. There's something inside you, quiet, constant, that has been speaking to you for years, not through words, but through longing, through restlessness, through that unshakable sense that you were meant to live differently. And now that voice is growing louder. It's no longer just a whisper. It's a call, a gentle, urgent pull saying you can't keep living half asleep. You know this already. You've been through enough to awaken. You've endured enough to understand that happiness doesn't come from perfection, and love doesn't always look like what you were taught. You've heard enough to stop romanticizing suffering, and you've healed enough to stop needing pain as proof that you're alive. But perhaps the most dangerous thing isn't the pain. It's the numbing. The way we start calling things normal just because we've gotten used to surviving them. We accept half-hearted love, half-present friendships, half-lived days, half-known selves, and slowly we begin to disappear inside our own lives. Awakening is a choice, not once, but every single day. It's choosing to pause before reacting, to speak from truth, not ego, to let go when it hurts, and love when it's hard. To be here now fully, no matter how imperfect now feels. You didn't come here to play roles. You didn't come here to blend in. You came here to remember who you truly are and to live in a way that honors that remembrance. And if you have that mark on your palm, know this: it's not a decoration. It's a sign, a reminder that you weren't built for small talk and shallow living. You are built to go deep, to break cycles, to live awake no matter how asleep the world seems around you. If you're at a crossroads right now, part of you clinging to what's familiar and part of you being pulled towards something unknown, then maybe this is the moment you stop asking for permission. Maybe this is the moment you stop delaying your return to yourself. You don't need to be ready. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest with what's real right now. That's where it begins. The awakening journey is not about fixing yourself. It's about removing everything that is not truly you. It's about being softer, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. Forgiving not because they deserve it, but because you do. Saying no without guilt. Saying yes to your truth, even if no one claps. And if today, in a quiet moment, you feel something stir inside you, a knowing, a tear, a breath you didn't realize you were holding, then maybe you've already begun. And this journey, from now on, can no longer be reversed. Because once a soul begins to remember, nothing is ever the same again. Not the way you love, not the way you grieve, not the way you exist in this world. You begin to see clearly, not because the world changes, but because you finally took off the mask. And what's left is real, unapologetic, alive, and deeply, deeply free. Conclusion. When the soul remembers who it is, everything begins to shift. If you've stayed with me this far, then perhaps you've already felt the most important truth. You didn't come across this message by accident. You arrived here because your soul is ready to remember. That mark on your palm, whether it's the letter M or a quiet crescent moon, isn't there to make you feel special. It's not a trophy. It's a soft responsibility, a gentle nudge from the universe saying you've walked far, you've endured deeply, and now it's time to stop surviving and start living truthfully. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be more enlightened, more spiritual, more anything. You just need to stop pretending you're asleep. Stop shrinking for the comfort of others. Stop chasing what no longer resonates. Stop waiting for some perfect version of you to appear before you can begin. Because the truth is, you're already enough right here, right now. If today you feel ready to let go of the old roles, to soften the armor you've worn for too long, and to enter the next chapter of your life with quiet clarity, then I want to say this to you gently but firmly. Welcome back. Not back to some ideal or perfect path, but back to yourself. And if you're still in the middle of it, still cycling through old patterns, still stumbling, still searching, please don't judge yourself. Awakening is not a race. It's not a finish line. It's a sacred, slow unraveling, a return to what was always true beneath the noise. And even the smallest act of honesty, even the tiniest breath of realness, can become a doorway to peace. You don't have to try so hard to be better. You only have to be more you. Because when you're real, you don't just heal yourself. You become a quiet invitation for others to remember themselves too. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing a soul can do. So if today you feel a shift, if something in your heart softened, if you exhaled more deeply than usual, then you've already started. The awakening has begun. And from here on out, you can no longer pretend you don't know who you are. Thank you for staying through to the end. If this message touched you, I invite you to share it with someone who might be silently waiting for a sign just like you were. Because sometimes, all it takes is one honest word, at the right moment, to awaken a soul that has been asleep for far too long. And if you carry this mark, then remember this. You carry a mission, and the world needs you not perfect, but awake, now more than ever.